You don't remember your childhood. Not really. You remember fragments, a few clear moments, a smell, a tone of voice, a birthday, a hallway. But the truth is, your childhood didn't disappear. It just moved underground. It became the architecture of your adult self. The way you react, the way you love, the way you flinch, the way you never ask for help, the way you sabotage your own joy. It's not random. It's not weakness. It's programming. And it started before you even had words for it. They told you to be a good boy, a nice girl, to behave, to smile, to not cry in public, to stop asking questions, to be grateful, to fit in, to be normal. And you did. You learned. You obeyed. You stopped raising your voice. You stopped dreaming out loud. You stopped asking for too much. You stopped showing your feelings. You became what they needed you to be. Quiet, predictable, acceptable, but not you. You learned that love is conditional, that silence is safer, that your feelings are too much, that your needs are inconvenient, that your ideas are weird, that your dreams are unrealistic. So you shrank. You folded yourself into the version of you that caused the least amount of trouble. You became efficient. You became polite. You became good at reading people, at anticipating, at adjusting. And everyone said you were mature for your age. But you weren't mature. You were scared. Scared to disappoint. Scared to be seen. Scared to take up space. Scared to be the real you. Because the real you had been quietly, consistently told to go away. And now you're an adult. And you can't figure out why it's so hard to relax. Why you can't say no. Why you panic when someone gets too close. Why you feel guilty for resting. Why you sabotage happiness the moment it arrives. Why you always need to prove something. Why you always feel behind. Why your joy doesn't last. Why you chase people who are distant. Why you get bored when things are calm. It's because your nervous system was shaped in a war zone of expectations. Your survival mechanisms became your personality. But now, they're not protecting you. They're trapping you. You're not broken. You're conditioned. And the worst part? You didn't even notice it happening. You just woke up one day and realized you've been performing your whole life. Your childhood self is still in there. The one who laughed too loud. The one who asked why. The one who danced when no one was watching. The one who wanted more. The one who felt everything deeply and said so. That child didn't die. That child got buried. Under shame, under fear, under the need to be accepted. And maybe you feel that ache now. That strange emptiness. That quiet hunger for something you can't name. That's not laziness. That's not depression. That's the child trying to breathe. You've spent your life becoming who the world told you to be. But the real you, the you that was never safe to be, that version is still waiting. Not to be rebuilt, but to be unburied. You were not born to be normal. You were not born to be a mirror of your parents' fears, or your teacher's expectations, or your culture's narrow definition of success. You were born to be real, messy, curious, emotional, alive. But you were trained to play a role that pleased others, a role that got praise, a role that made you invisible in the exact way that kept you safe. And so now, you're exhausted. Not because you do too much, but because you do so much that isn't you. You go to work, you smile, you say you're fine, you do what's expected, but somewhere deep down, something keeps whispering, this isn't it. And it's not, because you weren't meant to just survive. You were meant to feel, to create, to connect, to explore, to be free. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. It's about listening to the parts of you that have been silent for too long. The part that says, I don't want to go to that party. The part that says, I need to rest. The part that says, I'm scared, but I want to try anyway. The part that still believes in wonder, in magic, in love that doesn't hurt. People say, you're too sensitive, like it's a flaw. But what if it's your superpower? What if your sensitivity is what makes you human? What makes you real? What if the world needs less perfection and more people who feel? What if you stopped performing? What if you stopped proving? What if you stopped apologizing for existing? What would happen if you let the mask fall off? Maybe some people would leave. Maybe some would criticize. Maybe some would call you selfish. But maybe some would finally see you. Maybe some would finally love the you that you've been hiding. You're not here to impress. You're here to express, to remember, to reconnect, to choose differently. The truth is, your childhood never ended. It became your blueprint until you rewrite it. And you can. You're allowed to change the rules. You're allowed to question everything. You're allowed to say, that hurt me. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to not have all the answers. You're allowed to be a work in progress. You're allowed to be loud, emotional, inconsistent, scared, excited, quiet, wild, bold, slow. You're allowed to be human. Childhood shapes everything, but healing can reshape it. And it doesn't start with a therapist, or a book, or a retreat. It starts with one moment, one decision, to stop running, to turn around, to finally face the little you inside, and say, I see you. I'm sorry you were alone. I'm here now. You can come out. You're safe. And you don't have to be normal anymore. And once you say it, don't take it back. Let it echo. Let it breathe. Let it settle into your bones like truth. Because it is. You're not here to be small. You're not here to be acceptable. You're not here to shrink into someone else's expectations. You're here to expand, to grow, to rise. The child in you never asked for perfection, just presence, just love, just permission to be. So give it. The moment you start honoring that version of yourself, you begin to reclaim your life. Not the life they wanted for you, not the one you were trained into, but the life you were meant for. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to find yourself. Under the layers, behind the performance, beneath the armor. There you are, waiting, always have been. Let the world be loud. Let the world be rushed. Let them chase whatever they want. You just come home to yourself, to the child that never stopped hoping you would. But even after all of this, there's still a part of you that wonders, what if it's too late? What if the version of you that never got to exist never will? What if you've gone too far pretending for too long? Here's the truth. It's not too late. It was never too late. Because the real you was never destroyed, only hidden. The real you isn't fragile. It's patient. And it's still there, waiting for one thing: permission. You don't need to change your whole life overnight. You don't need to burn everything down. Sometimes healing doesn't look like a breakthrough. Sometimes it's a whisper, a pause, a tiny choice, like saying no when you've always said yes, like resting without guilt, like choosing joy even when it feels selfish, like letting yourself feel something fully without numbing it. That's how you begin. The child you were, they don't need you to be perfect. They don't need you to be fearless. They just need to know that you're here now and you're not going to leave them behind again. You see, you've been taught to look outside for answers, for validation, for safety, for a map. But the truth is, your body remembers everything, and it also knows the way home. You don't need another book, another plan, another performance. You just need to begin listening. When you feel that tightness in your chest, listen. When your jaw clenches, when your hands shake, when you're tired but can't sleep, listen. When you feel numb, bored, restless, empty, listen. There's a voice in there that's been quiet for years. It's time to hear it again. Because everything you've been looking for, peace, purpose, connection, wholeness, it doesn't come from doing more. It comes from finally being more of yourself. And maybe the reason you feel so disconnected isn't because you're lost. Maybe it's because you've been too far from the child who once knew exactly who you were. That version of you didn't worry about being good enough. That version of you didn't need permission to feel or to dream. That version wasn't ashamed of needing love, attention, care. That version just was raw, honest, alive, and that's still possible. That's still inside you, under the layers, beneath the expectations, behind the armor. It's there, and it's ready. So here's your moment. Not some grand speech, not some viral revelation. Just this. You're allowed to come back to yourself. You're allowed to stop performing. You're allowed to let it be simple. You're allowed to live a life that feels like yours. No more waiting. No more permission slips. No more pretending. It starts now.